Okay, it's 9:24, and I'm calling the Business and Governance Committee to order. We're calling the meeting to order. Rosie, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have a quorum with all members present today.
And first of all, I'd like to welcome Elvin to our committee. I think you'll find this an interesting committee to be on. So we're glad that you're here. Thank you for your service. Rosie, do we have any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, we do not have any public comment for today's meeting.
All right. Moving to the action items, we have 4 action items this morning. And the first one is from Ted. Staff's recommendation to approve payment of the annual supplemental benefit. And the second one is from Ted. So when you're done with number 1, just don't move.
Good morning. You should have the board materials in your package. Staff recommends the board approve the payment of the annual supplemental benefit to eligible retirees, and that will be determined during the November monthly pension payroll. The calculation that we arrive at allowed us to pay this benefit. It uses the concept of realized investment earnings after subtracting for SDCERS operations, investment-related expenses, administrative expenses, interest to the plan sponsor, the member accounts, and drop accounts. And then we arrive at the calculation, and there's more than sufficient realized earnings to pay this benefit. Hence, we request the board approve this. Now, open to any questions.
Yes,
Any
Johnny.
questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I ask Bobby?
Go ahead.
Johnny, just in as much as I'm a direct beneficiary of this, should I recuse?
Thank you for asking. My advice is no, because actually, thank you for attending their conflicts of interest training yesterday. And as we talked about yesterday, if what you're working on affects everyone equally, not something special for you, then it's not a conflict of interest. So just as you can approve the COLA for all the retirees when appropriate, you can approve the supplemental benefit too.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that.
No more questions? All right, I'd like to call, I need a motion and a second. Moved by Tom, seconded by Paul. We're waiting for the vote.
With all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 6-0.
Great. All right, Ted. Staff's recommendation to approve the 2024 drop interest crediting rate and the drop annuity factor, and to revise the board rules 610 and 640. And Ted, in your presentation, will you explain why they are different numbers?
To the extent possible, I will do so, and as brief a description as possible. Once again, staff recommends the board approve the drop interest crediting rate and the drop annuity factor of 4.2% and 4.6% respectively, effective January 1st, 2024, and revise the board rule 6.10, which relates to the drop account interest crediting rate, and 6.40, which relates to the drop annuity factor. Revise those rules accordingly. In looking at the 2 different rates, one is for the people that are currently considered active drop members. They get interest paid on a quarterly basis. It uses what we consider shorter term rates of approximately 5 years. The breakdown of those elements are contained within the memo. And then the drop annuity factor is actually considered a longer term calculation using 20-year rates of 3 different indices to arrive at them. It should be noted that both rates increased 170 basis points over the prior year.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? All right, I need a motion and a second. Moved by Tom, seconded by Alvin, and we call for the vote.
With all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Rosie. Moving on. Number 3, the insurance overview and staff's recommendation to purchase insurance. Johnny Tran. And company.
Good morning, Bobby. And again, welcome, Elvin. Before you is the annual overview of your insurance program and staff's recommendation to renew your fiduciary insurance. To my right is Sean Kratz, who's been with us for about 3 years now and is with Alliant. He's been with Alliant for over 20 years and manages a public pension practice nationally. He's the lead broker of 17 of the 20 California county retirement systems. It's very impressive. And represents many standalone retirement systems like SDCERS, statewide public retirement systems, etc. Sean's been active for nearly 2 decades in NASRA, if any of you have attended those conferences, the National Association of State Retirement, thank you, Association Administrators, as well as SACRS, the State Association of County Retirement Systems. I asked Sean for a short bio, and he wanted to add that he surfs, but I'm not going to give him credit for that because we grew up in the same area, and he knows I cannot surf, so I'm not going to give him that. But welcome. Thank you for coming from Irvine Farms.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning.
Sean, can you speak a little bit about Alliant?
Absolutely. So Alliant actually started in San Diego in 1929, of all places, and it used to be called Robert F. Driver Company, and then became Alliant Insurance, headquartered now out of Newport Beach. And so we've been in the public entity space for going on 50 years. And so that is our core business. So we focus on retirement systems across the country, PERS, STIRS, standalone systems, along with cities, counties, special districts. So that's all we do day in and day out is work with public entities across the country. If you look here, this gives you just a few statistics on our company. We are, this is important, $30 billion in premium volume, which brings a lot of leverage to your insurance placements when you're banding together with other public entities to purchase your insurance versus going into the standalone market on your own. Okay. So again, just some additional metrics here. We have 40 going on 50 years serving public entities, as mentioned. We have 15 exclusive programs. The other piece of this to recognize is that we've created our fiduciary liability program, which the system belongs to, and this system allows you, again, to band together and drive down the market, which gives you better terms, conditions, and pricing in the marketplace. And so, again, on a standalone basis, it's much harder to be able to procure those types of terms and conditions. And so, therefore, we believe you continue to be in the best position. This is just a sample of the other systems that we do work with throughout the state of California. And again, if you look at the size and depths of the systems that we work with the smallest ruralist systems all the way to the largest throughout the country, and that includes CalPERS.
And Sean and I talk year-round, so we only present in front of this board once a year, but he and I are constantly talking about our coverage, whether it's appropriate, whether we need different coverage, more, et cetera. So I really appreciate the teamwork that you've been able to give to me and to this board.
Absolutely.
Okay, this slide, I want to give you an overview of the insurance program that SDCERS currently has. We have retained commercial general liability and hired non-owned auto insurance for SDCERS and our board members. Commercial general liability, slip and falls on our property. Hired non-owned auto, 2 different concepts. If you rent a car, if a staff member rents a car and drives for SDCERS business, it covers third-party liability for that. If you drive your own car for SDCERS, any liability for a third party would be covered by the non-owned auto portion of that. We also procure or purchased employment practice liability. Think of that as discrimination insurance, defense as well, harassment claims, discrimination. And fiduciary liability insurance, which is mostly what we'll talk about today, but it protects and provides defense against claims of breach of fiduciary duty from you individually as board members, the board collectively, SDCERS, as well as its officers. As you know, we are connected to the city in that SDCERS employees are actually city employees, even though we owe a legal and loyalty obligation to SDCERS. But as city employees, the city provides some insurance that covers SDCERS and benefits us. SDCERS employees are covered by the Workers' Compensation Program, self-insured by the city. That also extends to board members. So if you were injured while performing your services for SDCERS, you could take advantage of the workers' compensation benefits. The city also has an employee dishonesty crime policy that would cover criminal activity from one of its employees, including SDCERS employees. And they also provide property content insurance, so our office equipment here at SDCERS, but not covering the building itself. Questions about that? Okay. Staff has authority to bind insurance or other costs of $50,000 or less, and so we will be renewing our commercial general liability, as well as the auto insurance, as well as the employment practices liability insurance. But the fiduciary insurance is above our authority, and so therefore we will be asking this board to bind that insurance coverage. Oh, before I moved on, I was supposed to mention two things. Sean and I have been exploring other insurances that we may want to procure. One of those insurances is really an enhancement of our current commercial general liability insurance. It's really, I tried to ask if there was a better name, but it's called deadly weapons coverage. And really what it is enhanced benefits insurance in case of a deadly weapon attack and SDCERS employees, staff, et cetera. It provides things like media coverage, crisis hotline, other things. So we will continue to explore that, Sean and I. And the other insurance that we continue to explore year-round, like every other retirement system or probably any other company now in the United States, is cyber insurance. And as you may recall, we have been self-insured for cyber insurance for about the last 2.5, 3 years, because of the ridiculous change in the market at that time when premiums rose 25 times higher than it was and still provided inadequate coverage that 95% of the time we would never get to meet anyway. So Sean and I have talked extensively about this. He has said that there's kind of a correction in the market, which I understand to mean that the insurance companies are coming down from wherever they were to make it possible that this would be feasible and economically viable insurance for us. So we'll be submitting another application this year to see where those quotes come by. Questions about that? Okay.
I have a question about that. That seems to me like a huge exposure that we potentially have there that's uninsured.
By not buying cyber insurance?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, cyber insurance is, to me, a mitigation tool. We're mitigating cost expenses. Cyber insurance doesn't prevent a cyber attack. It doesn't increase our cybersecurity. All it is really an expense measure. So the problem has been we could purchase the insurance, but it really wouldn't kick in for, I think it was something like 96% of any cyber problems against us. So economically speaking, it didn't seem like it was a good use of our sources. And notwithstanding that, in the meantime, what we have done is we have built up internally the different aspects of cyber insurance to help protect us. We have established relationship with media contacts to help us with any control there, with attorneys to help us with any legal issues and notification in case of a breach. I worked with IT to determine if we needed to look at other IT resources outside of SDCERS expertise in case of a hack or something like that. So,
Yeah, so Johnny, I'm just thinking of this classic thing that, we've all read about some institution being hacked and all of their computer systems or whatever taken over such that they can't operate, and then they're essentially held up for, $50 million, and unless we give it to them, then they don't release the data or whatever. I guess that's the thing that I would be concerned about, and I don't know how the insurance aspect applies to that.
well, we're concerned too. We actually have a closed session item to talk about our security threat, so I think we'll get in a little bit more about that in closed session. But safe to say the insurance would not help us, again, avoid a hack. They do offer some services that they could help remedy the problem. But again, I've worked with our IT division, and they believe those would be redundant of our services right now, and the protections in place, and the backup plan, and the business continuity plan in place. But please, Greg.
So if there's any hackers out there listening, we are not paying. So that is our official position.
Well, if I may add to that, to Johnny's point. So when he talks about the correction in the market, what happened is when cyber liability insurance was created, it was created literally when the whole Y2K thing happened. That was the birth of cyber liability insurance. So public entities didn't purchase any sort of insurance for that. Y2K never happened. And so what happened in that marketplace for many years is it was ridiculously inexpensive, and they were giving away the store for it. Then you fast forward, 15 years later, and all of a sudden the Walmarts and the Targets and everybody start getting these ransomwares and these hacks. So now it kind of flips it on its head, right? Now you went from an extremely soft market to now a market that insurance companies were actually running the other direction, not wanting to provide any capacity for it. Then you fast forward a few years after that, public entities now are the number one target actually in the US for these types of events. And so what happened is because it was so inexpensive for so long, the last 4 to 5 years, when you used to purchase it, it was still very tolerable and the retentions were tolerable. You fast forward the 5 years of corrections that the markets have had to make. Now the prices are starting to come back down, the retentions are starting to come back down, and now it might be a more viable business decision and something that would be worth the trade-off to transfer that risk. And so you just had this delta where you were insuring the risk, but moving to self-insurance at that time was actually impactful because the premiums, to Johnny's point, did go up 25, I've seen it 300% in certain entities, mainly cities and counties. But to that point, we're in a really good position in the next year or two to reevaluate that. There's a lot more capacity coming into the marketplace, and so we're going to have more options to be able to offer.
If I could, Bobby?
I was just going to hop in and say, Chris, what's happened over time is that we've increased prevention measures, and we've had these presentations, over time, specific through the internal audit procedures and what those types of things. So you haven't been to those meetings, but the increase in the prevention has been dramatic. And I think we'll hear more about that in closed session today. Okay?
And also, I just wanted to offer that it really is a cost benefit. The insurance is really how do you help after something has happened, and looking at the cost of it versus what we could actually use in that, it didn't make economic sense. And
Yeah.
what I'll do is I've got some materials that we've provided to the committee in past years that really kind of explains it more in depth, and you can see why we went to be self-insured versus trying to insure it through an insurance company as a back-end control.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. This slide is just to show you a small uptick in the cost of our commercial general liability and hired non-owned auto insurance. Again, insurance that staff will be purchasing. That uptick is a combination of we scheduled all our insurances to renew in December to help save any remaining black hair on my head. Simplifies the process, and so the year prior, 2020, to 2023 is a shorter period and a small tick in the premium cost. That is the same for the employment practice liability. Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you now. If you could talk about what fiduciary insurance is, how we've stacked it and organized it, why that's appropriate, and then ultimately our recommendation from you and from me to renew the insurance.
Absolutely. Thanks, Johnny. So again, the system purchases on a primary basis $10 million of limit. And so again, this is protection for the board, for any past, present, future employees, for any errors or omissions as it relates to managing the assets of the system. And so Euclid Hudson is by far the leader in the space for public entities, specifically retirement systems, and they've been in the space for decades. We have an exclusive program through them, which means that because of the leverage of systems that we write around the country, we actually write our own insurance contract for the program, which then becomes a benefit of your system as well. So you have the broadest coverage terms and conditions worldwide that are available. The $10 million primary limit, the reason that Euclid doesn't write your full limit is because capacity issues. And so as you can imagine, not like property insurance where you may have 150 property insurers around the country, around the world. In fiduciary liability, specifically for public entities, you probably have 6 that actually know what they're doing. The balance that write fiduciary liability are writing public entities on what's called a labor management form, which is, it doesn't make any sense because it's riddled with ERISA, which you guys aren't subject to the laws of ERISA. Right, so we have put together this program specifically to make sure that retirement systems are covered to the fullest extent that you can be for any and all situations that you get into. So the capacity, Euclid maxes out at $10 million. You have a $2 million retention per claim. And then the premium that is going up slightly is really just due to your assets and management have increased about 10%. So that is the reason for the minimal increase there. So if we go to the next slide, the additional capacity that we were able to get through coaction, which again has been on your program in an excess, so just picture a tower, basically the primary, and then your excess just sits above that. It is $5 million excess of the $10 million. The form follows, which is very important. So when you bring together primary insurance and excess insurance, you have to ensure that those contracts talk. Because a lot of times, if brokers don't know what they're doing, they'll place something else on top of it, and then all of a sudden you can pay claims in that first layer, but because the contract doesn't match, the top layer then doesn't attach. So it's very important that it's follow form, which your form is. And again, the uptick in premium there is very minimal just due to exposure. So when you look at your system from an insurance risk standpoint, you guys are very favorable. You guys are what I would call best in class as far as how you run your meetings, even down to the IT security systems. They look at all of this and how you run your system and basically the way that you guys are organized as a system, which helps, again, from a proactive risk management standpoint. They're going to put you guys at the top of the list because you guys are that well managed. And so I want to make sure that the board understands that is the feedback that we get back when we take your account into the worldwide marketplace. And then the last is the directors and officers, Side A liability, which is basically for non-indemnifiable directors and officers type claims. That's with RLI insurance, 10 million per occurrence, excess of 15 million, and again, a nominal increase on that as well. So the staff and broker recommendation for the board to bind the insurance renewals not to exceed $246,700. And again, broken down, the primary $149,500, excess $47,700, D&O $49,500 for an estimated closing cost of $246,700.
Sean?
Johnny, I have a quick question.
Yes, Paul.
We just contributed to fiduciary insurance through you in a separate action, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago. How does that relate to the fiduciary coverage here?
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. Could you ask the question again?
Yeah, there was
Waiver
a-
of recourse.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're asking about waiver of recourse coverage.
Waiver recourse, excuse me.
That's completely separate
Okay.
than what you're doing today. And that's something that the fiduciary insurance companies offer to different fiduciaries, including you, separate from your job at SDCERS and providing coverage for SDCERS, the entity. So what you're talking about is, let me take a minute. The state of California allows public retirement systems to purchase fiduciary insurance because this is a tough job. And so the law recognizes that. But part of that law also says that if a fiduciary is found liable for breaching that fiduciary duty, then that insurance policy is able, the insurance company is able to seek indemnification or come after the breached fiduciary for reimbursement of that amount. That's what the law is, and these are the policies that are available to SDCERS as an entity. What the insurance companies can do, and in this cases they have done, is offer a separate insurance policy for you individually to prevent that recourse that the insurance company could have. But that comes out of your own pocket and not SDCERS's.
So that's a safety valve for us if we mess up in some way, shape,
Yes.
or form.
As
and we're liable
individuals
for it.
in your choice,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Johnny, I had a question. The estimated total annual cost, $246,700 and $700. The excess fiduciary liability is slightly under the estimated. So do we want to just add a couple hundred to the estimated total annual in case it does go up to that threshold, or?
You could, Tom. Actually, Greg suggested that, and I had rewritten that. So thank you for two more smart minds than mine. Let me explain why it's not to exceed real quick, and Sean, you'll do a better job if I can't do it well. But the way I understand the market to work is that Alliant, Sean, is not able to get hard quotes because they just won't give it to us given the amount of time, despite the year of preparation that we have. So we're estimating what the premium will be. So therefore, that's why it's a not to exceed and not a hard dollar amount. In terms of increasing that amount, so that way I don't have to come back to you and ask for more, I'd love that. I just wanted to give you a fair representation. So if you want to make a motion to not exceed whatever number that is, I would entertain that.
And I can,
I would say at least $200 more just to calculate that difference of the excess fiduciary. But if there needs to be a higher number, I'm okay with that.
yeah, and just to add a little more color around that, so these not to exceed numbers are actually very common in the public entity space. And the reason for that is simply because the insurance companies, a lot of the insurance coverages are in what we call a hard market. So if you Google public entity insurance, it's in a very hard market, whether it's property liability, it really doesn't matter. You guys have heard about it, nuclear liability verdicts, those types of things. So what it's done is it's caused this backstop of where before we could get quotes 90 days out from insurance companies. The reason is the field underwriters were the ones that were giving us the quotes, and they had freedom and they could do their job. Nowadays, everything has to go through a management process now. Everything that's underwritten, every single account has to go all the way to the top of management to get approved and all the way back down. So now, insurance companies, depending on which ones they are, they won't give us quotes 60 days out. Some of them won't even give us quotes until 30 days from your renewal, which again is not until December. So the reason we do these not to exceeds is because, again, some of the insurance companies up here, even though we've negotiated out where we believe we're going to land, they simply cannot give us the bindable quotes yet. However, the meetings now, should be binding in December. So just to give you a little bit more color of what's going on in the market.
Thank you. Yes, Alvin.
Question. This is the first time I've seen where you tell the market how much you're willing to pay for insurance, since this is such a subjective number, right? So when I go to market, I don't know how big the market is, right? And if you have multiple carriers or two carriers or whatever that may be, but how is it competitive if we're telling them what we're willing to pay, and they just say, oh, well, you're willing to pay $246,700. It's $246,700. Oh, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And actually, we go into the market about 120 days out, okay? And so all of the negotiations, so they don't just come to us and say, this is what it is. So you guys have a history of claims, you have a history of premiums. And then they, having been on your account for some time, understand and know your account fairly well and what it should be priced at from all of the other systems and, right, it's all their evaluation they do in the underwriting. And so when they actually came in for this renewal, they were about 8 to 9% higher than the numbers that we're presenting. So we actually did negotiate over the last couple of months to get them down as far as we could. There's really no line of insurance coverage these days, even if you're the cleanest account, that you will get a flat or a reduction, unless you've had a claim situation and that carrier wants off your account, and then you take it to another insurance company and maybe they're willing to take a bet on it. But for the most part, we do start at a much higher point and then drive them down. It's very uncommon for them just to come in and flat and say, okay, let's just do that. So
How many proposals will you be reviewing, or how many proposals will Johnny or staff be seeing before they approve the policies?
yeah, absolutely. So we typically, again, in the overall marketplace, like I mentioned, there's about 6 carriers that write fiduciary liability very well. So we do all of that background work and have those conversations, have the conversations with the incumbent to figure out who's going to come in where, right? And so when we have those conversations, your incumbent carrier has been and continues to be the most competitive. The other thing that we know for certain is the other policy forms. When I mentioned we manuscript your form, the other off-the-shelf policies that they're willing to offer for about the same premium, they're not giving you nearly the amount of coverage that you're getting from this national program. Does that answer your?
No, it totally is.
Okay.
I just know that this is going to be public after we vote on it and it's approved. So
Sure.
all the carriers, if they were smart enough, they would look at this and say, what can their maximum number would be? That's what I would do, right?
Absolutely.
But as long as it's competitive, or you guys are getting multiple bids and you have a competitive set towards this number, that's fine. I would be okay with that.
Thank you, Alvin. And I think you've also picked up on one of the difficulties of working for a public entity. We do work for the public. We do things transparently and openly, and there is no exception for us to talk about this in closed session. So there it is. Tom, with your suggestion, then how about 247,000 even? Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you sorted out? Just, it looked like the employment practices insurance rose by something like 60%.
Yeah, that's the 18%.
Yeah, I don't think 60, right?
And I'm wondering, what, that seemed, I understood they were, I could accept that they would all go up a bit, but 60% seemed like a huge ramp.
Yeah, so again, we were being very conservative on that number, and so the end number that we're anticipating coming in is about 25%. And the EPL market in California is it's in a very hard market, and so that type of increase is common that we're seeing around from these carriers. But again, we did inflate that number quite a bit to be conservative for a not to exceed number. And that's really what we're having to manage, is we're making the recommendation to ensure that we don't come in over that number.
So there's something about that line of insurance in California that is, could you just enlighten me? Why
Yeah.
is that so?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, employment practices, just lawsuits in general, California specifically is one of the leaders in the nation for employment practices type liability lawsuits, and the most costly to defend when you look at kind of a state by state, right? And so EPL premiums have been going up whether you're private or public. And so that's just been the cause of the increase. And it's not much different when you look at the liability side of things, just to give you a little bit of comparative. Liability for public entities across the country have gone up 50 to 200%. And so it's really just a matter of the number of claims coming in versus premium they're charging.
Sure.
And that's what basically causes those increases.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion.
One quick, Johnny, why are we not voting on all of them together, and we're just voting on the fiduciary and the directors?
Good question, Tom. It's because the other insurances are within staff's authority to purchase that insurance. We can do that without the board's authority.
Madam Chair, do we need to change the motion before we approve the motion?
That's fine.
Yeah.
To 247,000?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I actually have already changed it. It's just not translating to the actual screen. So I do apologize. I'm not sure why it wouldn't show.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to approve staff's and the broker's recommendation to bind the fiduciary insurance renewals not to exceed 247,000.
Thank you, Bobby.
I'll second. Wall seconds.
Thank you.
I need my voting screen. I need help.
So are we just doing this show of hands because it's not right on the screen, or what are we doing?
Is the voting, I can just do it by roll call if everyone is agreed. All right. Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
Thomas Battaglia, Chris Brewster,
Yes.
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Alvin Lai,
Yes.
Paul Lotz. And with all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you for being flexible.
Of course. I'm sorry about the technical difficulty today.
Hey, Johnny.
Johnny, don't move.
Madam Chair, could I?
That
Madam
was
Chair,
my mother voice.
Madam Chair, could I request for the cyber insurance, if that were to come up, could we ask the broker to bring how they're calculating that risk and fee? Because I know that keeps changing on a yearly basis, so I'm curious if that is something that we want to consider, how they calculate that.
Do you want to respond to that, Johnny?
Yeah, sure, Alvin. I can provide you that material.
All right, moving on to action item number 4.
I apologize. I'm trying to signal my IT assistants here because it's, again, not translating to the screen, the current motion that we're trying to vote on.
So staff's recommendation to review various board processes.
Yes, thank you. There's a lot of governance documents in front of you, and we do this every meeting as a best practice, and I really appreciate your review of that. Staff is recommending just a small change to a board rule that governs what pay codes are pensionable compensation that we recognize to calculate pensionable compensation for the port and airport members due to the Public Employees Pension Reform Act of 2013. And so the changes reflect that the Port District is updating their pay codes. And so our job is to review those pay codes, review PEPRA, and make sure they match the law, as your job is to help enforce PEPRA. So that's the recommendation for Rule 2.130. I will need a motion and a second, please.
Okay, great. Moved by Paul, seconded by Tom. And we're voting.
And with all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 6-0. And once again, thank you so much for the board, committee board, for just be patient with us here this morning.
All right, moving on to our reports. We have Member Services Division Report, Jessica Taylor. Oh, no, we have Cynthia. Yep.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
I am genuinely so happy to be here and see you all. Thank you. First, I would like to welcome Elvin Lai. I'm so pleased with all of you for wanting to serve with us. And I had the pleasure of meeting with Elvin yesterday and loved the questions and the enthusiasm and just appreciate it all. So thank you all. So, and also want to tell you that I've been watching you online and you all look really good on camera. So as you know, I spent 4 months working on an important project that I have dubbed the Procedures and Succession Planning Project. And I'm doing this for the wide variety of tasks performed by the member services team and the even wider array of questions asked by our members. A major focus of the SDCERS team is ensuring continuity, succession planning, and preserving the institutional knowledge of the very smart people who have dedicated their careers to improving SDCERS. Also me. This is definitely reflective of our core values, I think, of integrity and professionalism, because it matters when I go off into my happy little sunset, which is not for a while. So you all know that we have an action item that is related to these workflows and procedures, and Greg talks about it a lot, and it's a very important focus. And we have to prioritize what we want to work on so we're not being reactive. And it's important to note that so many of our projects rely on our best of class IT team's programming in order to be implemented. And Victoria Fedelizo on our team works really closely with all those hard technical parts. So but we also have complementary skills like member communication in the holistic sense. And when I was preparing for this last night, I thought about calling it soft skills. Oh, no, they're not soft. They're very hard skills. And so I wanted, with the 15 years of experience I've had with things that I have held on to myself, but I'm just really wanting to make sure that the team can do all of it. And I just want to note from those of you, I think everybody was here for disability, there was an approval of a person who had died. For that approval. That is the fruits of our team's labors, of working together to know how to take care of a person on a very short time frame and get things set for them for the future. So it's a sad situation, but it made me feel like we have accomplished some of the things, very much of these things that we're trying to do to make sure that we can handle things very quickly and in a very compassionate way. So I wanted to write these procedures because I want to guarantee that members will continue to receive excellent customer service in the future. I believe that at SDCERS we have a culture of training, and we are working really hard to, we talk about these procedures all the time. We have a regular training schedule set up. We are coordinating with the other divisions. It's all very complementary. And I really think the team here has genuine servant hearts, and I love seeing the collaboration because we have a lot of smart people that do a lot of good work, and we just want to make sure that that will always carry on. So I am incredibly appreciative of the opportunity of being given the time to do this. And as you read in the report, I was able to complete more than 30 procedures and working on all of our training. I want to give a very special thank you, as has been said before, to Victoria Fedelizo and Jessica Taylor sitting back there, who ran the show while I was out doing this. And of course, they have had great input on all of this as well. So very important to us to keep all this moving. So one of the reasons it's important is because we do have staffing changes going on, and we love to see people promote from within, and that creates a wonderful domino effect of opportunities. So I'm definitely playing dominoes right now. So I would like to give a shout out to one of our veterans here who has promoted up to the supervising retirement counselor position, and that is Sarah Levy on our team. I was going to have her come down today, but she is very busy serving a member and training another person for the domino effect. So it's great to see the team using all of this. We have several people working in out-of-class assignments with, if you're not a city speak geek, like I know Tom is, that means that there is a temporary vacancy occurs, and we have an opportunity for someone who is eligible to move up in that position and take time to get that experience. So it's a great opportunity. And with that mention of the counselors, I'm just dying, Auditor Bobby, to give you the counselor's version of the drop explanation. Ted did such a great job sharing that wonderful news. And so for us in our world, I think Marcelle even talks about it in her report, this is a planning tool for us. Last week at the annual meeting, Paul, I had several members coming up asking about what are those rates going to be? And I'm like, oh, just you wait. We'll be announcing it next week. So for us, whether the rates are going up or down, that is going to affect member behavior on whether they might leave sooner or later. So our way of explaining those rates to members when they're coming into this is that the drop participation rate is an interest rate that you're going to get while you're in that 5-year drop period. Honestly, if it was 0, still be cool. But the interest rate going up is good. Now that drop annuity factor, that one matters after you retire, but it only affects the people who choose to take an annuity, and you have several choices. A lot of people just want to take that money and roll it over to a financial planner who is telling them all about how they can invest that money so well. But some folks want to leave it with our amazing SDCERS fund, and then that is where the annuity factor matters. So that annuity factor goes up is a huge driver of member behavior. So I love that the team was like, have we heard the news yet? Have we heard the news? We need to plan our calendars. Do we get to have vacation? So very happy that we have such a well-oiled machine and that we all are working together knowing when these things are coming up. So lastly, I want to mention October was super fun. Got to hang out with Chris, Paul, bunch of retirees, went to a number of events, which Marcelle has highlighted in her report as well. But the annual meeting last week was really cool. It's an effort that we've been doing ever since I've been here. And it's a great effort. Everyone did a good job. We had about 80 people there. And I just want to specifically thank our board president, Paul Kaufman, for doing the introductory introduction on that. And I was actually really just using that as a segue to also thank Paul for the amazing, you have a very talented hobby as a photographer, and there was a wonderful arrangement made that we would have had the photos put up in the office. And I'm sure Greg's going to talk about it more, but I just want to tell you how much staff loves it. Staff has been crazy about it. And I love the picture that's by my office. So we just appreciate the support from everyone in every way. So if you have any questions, otherwise, thank you. I enjoyed taking all my proxy time from the last 4 months to speak to you now.
Thank you. You make it fun. Marcelle,
Good morning.
tough act to follow.
I know.
Yeah?
Can you go back on another project, Cynthia, so I don't have to follow you anymore? I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, Prop B. It is still moving along. We did have a major milestone since the last board meeting, which is on September 21st, we were able to provide Chiron with the data information for what we call Phase 3 employees. These are former city employees who were hired during Prop B, so they were ineligible to become members of SDCERS, and they separated from the city before that magic July 8th, 2022 date, which is when people had the option to join SDCERS that had been precluded from doing so. There are right about 2,000, which is amazing, because if you go back to my report 2 years ago, I think I say there's about 2,000. So we did have that number right, even as we've gone through and gotten more details on it. So that information is with Chiron right now for Chiron to do their calculations. Then it comes back to the city. They've got some work to do to get a letter and contracts out to those 2,000 former employees. The city has been in communication with them through this time period, trying to make sure that we've got good addresses, that they have good addresses, that they know how to contact these former employees. So those letters are anticipated to go out beginning of next calendar year, once we get the data back from Chiron. So that'll be the last big piece of the Prop B project. So happy to see that moving along. Yeah, it's good news. Thank you, Cynthia, for talking about how drop rates impact what people do, impact their behavior. There is a chart in my report that you can go back and look at that shows when do people enter drop, when do they exit drop, when do they service retire. And you can see there are those 2 times a year that very important things happen that change people's behavior. One is, what is the COLA on July 1? So we see a large group of people entering drop, service retiring right before then to get that COLA. And then you see the history of, do they exit in December or do they exit in January? Because it depends on what's happening with the drop rates. So it is a good planning tool. Thank you for highlighting that we do use that. Benefits Administration looks at it because they know they're going to be calculating the estimates and the benefits, and Member Services looking at it because they've got to meet with all those members to talk to them about it. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is retiree health and that request for proposals. It did close in July. There were proposals, there was review done. It is still in process going forward right now. It is still a confidential process between risk management and purchasing. But what I can share, the good news is it's moving forward. There is something moving forward. It didn't end with there's nobody that's qualified and we have to start from square one again. So hopefully at the January meeting, we'll be able to share more definitive news on that project. And happy to answer any questions.
Well, we're thankful that there were responses to the RFP, right?
Yes,
That's
very
good.
thankful. Very, very thankful there were responses.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Let's see, who's on page 2 here? IT, Michelle.
Good morning. I'd like to highlight a few updates in my status report. For the 6th year in a row, the SDCERS IT team received the IT Practices Award from the Municipal Information System Association of California, also referred to as MISAC. MISAC is an organization of over 1,800 government-related organizations across California with a mission to promote information sharing, access to resources, and to enhance technology effectiveness and security strength. This year, the criteria to receive the award changed to better align to NIST standards. We'll talk more about NIST standards in our closed session, but for now, please realize this is a framework created for federal agencies to establish best practices in IT and security. SDCERS, along with 12 other agencies of that 18, met the minimum criteria to receive this award. So this speaks highly on the practices and the dedication from our IT team. In July, we had our annual network penetration testing performed, and I'm happy to report that it's now concluded. That confidential executive summary is included in your board material. In summary, the vendor RSI found 4 low-severity vulnerabilities. All have been addressed with the exception of one that is vendor-dependent. We continue to press that vendor to resolve that issue, but seeing that it's low risk and low criticality, we're having slow response from that vendor. In RSI's conclusion, they stated that the SDCERS network was observed as extremely secure. Something to note that in past years, the network penetration vendor was hired through an RFP process and then managed by our internal auditor, Sarah Dixon. She and I both agree that IT managing this process on a go-forward basis as part of our security practices makes the most sense. So going forward, this will be a vendor that IT selects and manages and works with in that engagement. But don't fear, Sarah will still be involved. She'll be making sure we do our due diligence and we complete that exercise. Lastly, October was Cybersecurity Awareness Month. The collective IT management team, including Sean Kilpack, Norma Frank, and Joe Saucedo, created an outreach campaign for staff. We took advantage of that month to better educate the team on cyber threats. Weekly communications went out with the focused topics to educate people in various ways to protect them personally, but also protect SDCERS from cyber threats. We tried to make it fun with interactive activities, and we concluded the month with a raffle at our Halloween event. It was fun and well received by staff. I continue to be very proud of our IT team. I think these accomplishments I've mentioned show the dedication that they have to SDCERS integrity. And this concludes my updates if you have any questions.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Johnny, are you giving a report?
Thank you, Bobby. I did want to highlight just one thing, and then I wanted to give an update on the ad hoc committee for Fiduciary Council. So I wanted to highlight that staff will be correcting the benefits of about 50 members whose benefits were based off of incoming reciprocal pensionable compensation. For you, some of you that don't know what reciprocity is, it's a wonderful part of everyone's plan here at SDCERS that allows some flexibility for a member to work at a different public agency that has reciprocity and use those years of service credit at SDCERS, use those years of service credit at the reciprocal agency to complete any vesting requirement needed in order to retire. So if I had 5 years at SDCERS, 5 years at SDCERA, the San Diego County, and I could retire in 10 years of service credit, I could do that and not just be in one system. One of the other benefits of that is that you use the provisions require us to use the final compensation from the reciprocal agency with the highest pensionable salary. Historically, staff has understood the law to require us to look and apply any constraints of our plan when looking at that pensionable compensation. So for a few years now, we have looked at whether we need to apply salary caps under the different plans, IRS caps under the different plans, whether we could accept certain pay codes from other systems that weren't recognized here under the plans of the city, port, and airport. We worked very closely with Fiduciary Council and really understood our job a little differently now. And so we will be changing some of those constraints on incoming pensionable compensation. Overall, this will increase the benefits of these retirees, which I think is a good thing. And it will also streamline our process, our scrutinization of those incoming salaries, which is also a good thing. Okay?
Will that be retroactive?
Yes.
Johnny, thanks. So you said in here, generally, it's going to increase their benefits. Are there individuals for whom the benefits will decline?
That's a better question for Marcel, in that she can, as you know, facts are so specific for each member in their journey along to retirement. So can you please help me with that one?
Absolutely. We're still reviewing the data, for starters, so I don't know for sure, but it appears that there may be a retiree that it would decrease their benefit, but I can't tell you for sure right now because we have not had a chance to completely review the data. We're still making sure we have a full population identified, and then we'll have to do the calculations and look and see what specifically the circumstances are for each individual.
So this is somebody who's currently receiving benefits?
Correct. All these corrections are people that are currently receiving benefits, yes.
Okay. So that'd be a real blow to that person, I suppose.
Potentially, and I don't even know if there will be anybody. I would know in the January meeting, we should be able to give you a recap.
Okay.
But I don't know for sure what the impact will be because we are still doing the research.
And then so this is also impacting other people who are active at this time, right?
So it'll be a change to how we handle reciprocity on a go-forward basis for those active members, yes. It doesn't change anything that they're doing right now.
But what I mean is they moved over from some other system. They came in, we calculated whatever, however we calculated it. So they might today think, when I retire, I'm going to have this benefit, and it's actually going to be something different as a result of the recalculations, right?
When people come to SDCERS with reciprocity, we don't have the salary data at that time. We don't get the reciprocal salary data generally until they are close to retiring. So what we tell people when they're looking at their benefit calculations, if you go onto the portal and you do a benefit calculation, that's going to be using the data here at SDCERS that we have. If they know of different data from a reciprocal system, then they can put that in there as well. Generally, if someone's coming to SDCERS, their highest salary is going to be with us. It'd be more likely if somebody left SDCERS to perhaps go to the county, and then went on to our portal to do a calculation, it's going to use our data, but they have the ability to put in the data that they know at the reciprocal agency, what their current salary is at the reciprocal agency. But we can't give them those specifics until they get closer to retirement when we request that information from the reciprocal systems.
So just to follow this, just so I understand, so somebody's a planner at the county, and they work there for 10 years, and their highest pay is $100,000 a year or something like that. And so they move over to the city, and for whatever reason, the income here is $80,000, and they work for 5 years. So then when they retire, they're getting that 100,000 as their highest year of pay credited to them in both systems, essentially?
Correct.
Okay, and vice versa, obviously?
Correct.
Okay. And so that's what you're saying, is that it's really hard to calculate final retirement benefits anyway, so they probably aren't fully aware of what those would be. And the way you're fixing this is going to be not something that's evident to them that, oh, wow, this changed. They'll find that out when they get their retirement calculation.
Right. And we also, just to be clear, we're not talking about significant changes for the most part.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And I just wanted to give a quick update, Bobby, on your ad hoc committee for Fiduciary Council. In September, this board issued an RFP for Fiduciary Council to provide legal services to the board. President Kaufman formed an ad hoc committee. That ad hoc committee has been very busy reviewing all the responses they've received. They've even interviewed finalists, and I understand they're ready to present their recommendation to the board in January. Okay, thank you.
How many respondents?
4. Yeah, very happy with that.
Jenny, on the litigation. So on the first case, am I understanding that the Supreme Court, whatever their case was, essentially caused our case to go back to whatever Superior Court or something?
That's correct. We'll talk about that more in closed session.
Oh, okay,
tomorrow.
good. Tomorrow? Okay,
Yes.
good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I believe that that's it for the reports. There are 2 reports from Ted from the Finance Division. I assume that the audit is done?
Not yet.
Close? Oh, very close.
Yes.
Yeah, our meeting is, yeah, right. Thank you, Ted. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but really I did. Any questions or comments? Greg?
Yes, I always have, oh, Chris, do you have, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, please,
no.
Greg? No?
No,
Okay.
please.
So Bobby and I had the opportunity to attend some training at, I'll say, a nearby city
Right.
recently. And it was a really good training, SDCERS training. But one of the things that came up, and Bobby wasn't in the same session as I was that best practice for pension systems is to have a CEO succession plan that's sort of like an off-the-shelf plan in case of unexpected departure.
Winning the lottery.
Well, there were a lot of examples, but I wanted to ask, do we have something like that?
We're working on it.
Yeah, I would just say that the logic behind it, from what I understood, was that if something suddenly happened, as opposed to having to call, and I suppose you would do this anyway, call an immediate emergency meeting and all the rest of these kinds of things, that there would at least be some thought process that you are going through. Not just because you knew your CEO was talking about leaving in a few years, but more along the lines that, yeah, there was some sudden
Something with a bus.
negative consequence, yes, that could happen.
We like the lottery
Right.
analogy
So
better.
it just seemed to me like we should be thinking along those lines, and we should have something where, you know, at that moment, that plan is pulled off. We know who's got the reins, you know, for at least a 30-day period until we come up with some other plan and those kinds of things. So I would just encourage that we think about putting something like to get that together.
I think we're going to address that tomorrow.
Yes,
Right.
thank you.
Yep.
Your turn.
All right. So first of all, again, thank you, Elvin, for joining the Business and Governance Committee. A lot happens at this committee, and I really echo Bobby's comments that it's very interesting, and you get to really see all the nuts and bolts of the organization that are non-investment, really through this committee. It's pretty wonderful. Also, I'd like to echo the comments of Cynthia, how much staff have really been enjoying our new artwork up in our new space. As many of you know, that we had the opportunity to renegotiate our lease agreement during the COVID years. So we got a really great market rate for a new workspace. So we came up into our new workspace in January, and as we were looking around our new work area, a lot of blank walls. And like, what? We have an opportunity here to do something special. What should we do? And about that time, Mr. Kaufman published a book, The Neighborhoods of San Diego, with a variety of different pictures from our community. And it's the community we serve. And I said, Paul, is there any way we can have access to your library of photographs so we can put them up around the organization and to reflect the community that we serve? And Paul very generously said yes. And so over, I think it's taken about a year of selecting photos and, placement and working with the print shop, we finally had them installed very recently. So if after this meeting, if you'd like to come up to the 8th floor and see our new workspace with, I call it the Kaufman Gallery. There is about 40 images from our community throughout the work areas. If you'd like to come up and take a look at them, please do.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.
And just while we're on that subject, is this book available for purchase anywhere?
It is.
Oh, could you enlighten me?
Yeah, I've got a website. I'll give you the link. And
Thank you
can
very much.
Purchase it. Yeah.
Are you done? Okay. All right. With that, I believe we have a closed session that we're going into.
We do, Bobby, so I'd ask those that aren't in closed session to leave the room now, and we'll stop broadcasting this meeting.
And plus, everybody, if they have their act together, it always says 5 years. They can bail in 3 years, but if they say 3 years, we change the drop a lot.
Where is he? Okay, well. Some people never even go into drop. Just let us know when we can come back in.
You should have anticipated that.
I know.
Go back to the open session, so we're turning the system back on.
So Bobby, if that is given to the entire board, so we suggested this at the end of the meeting, so that maybe, because I mean, I got a lot out of it, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for a dose already.
Madam Chair, we are ready to proceed.
Johnny, do we have a closed session report?
Yes, we have nothing to report out of closed session. Thank you.
Well, with that then, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Bobby.